Welcome to Can't Stop the Pop, the podcast, where we, that's me, Matty,
and me, Craig,
do a deep dive on a song from the 90s or noughties.
So, Matty, it's your choice this week. So what song are we doing?
We are doing a song that you've never written about, Ooh La La by Goldfrapp. So, what are your immediate thoughts?
Sounds like a Rachel Stevens song, doesn't it?
Oh, you had to say that, didn't you? No, Craig. Oh.
Okay. I know. I will briefly discuss this, but I knew that would wind you up. Anyway, before we get into it, who are Goldfrapp and why are we talking about this song in particular?
Goldfrapp as a duo, where it's weird to put them in a genre, because I'm going to loosely say dance act, even though their breadth of work is far bigger than that. They were a British duo of Alison Goldfrapp and Will Gregory, and they were around for over 20 years as a duo. And I do think that they quite slowly but massively influentially changed the course of British dance music, British genre music, and often don't get the credit they deserve for that. And we are talking about this song in particular because this was their real mainstream song, which made them household names, really. The album that this was from, which we will go on to talk about, was a massive seller. And I think this album is the reason why we're still talking about them as a duo today. Alison Goldfrapp, the singer, has still continued. She has 2 solo albums now. I've seen her multiple times as a solo artist, and she's fantastic. And she's still performing songs from this album as the key moments of her live sets. So that's why we're talking about it. It was a real peak moment for them as a duo. What do you think of the song? Because I feel so much that we want to discuss is actually about the surrounding elements of it.
I very much remember this song. It's not necessarily a song that I would actively listen to, but I think it's just because I wasn't in that space at the time. Do you remember when we went out for your birthday a few years ago and you got a little bit drunk and you left early? And
Did I?
You did, yeah. But there was people going, oh, let's go on to somewhere else. And someone said we could go to Sweatbox. And I was like, oh, that sounds fun. And you were like, no, that's not where you go. That's how I feel about Goldfrapp. I just don't go here.
I don't know how to segue from that. If anyone wants to Google what Sweatbox is, we're usually supposed to be a PG podcast, Craig.
We are.
This took a turn. Did not expect this.
As a song, I think it's really, really good. I was not overly familiar with Goldfrapp's material. I'm still not. But if I listen to some of the singles from the previous album, I think this is a very strong evolution on their sound. It was a mainstream breakthrough, and there were probably some reasons for that that do, like it or not, involve Rachel Stevens. But it's a way of going mainstream without them becoming a sellout, or if you want to say they sold out, they did it in a very authentic way and a very accomplished way. The production, I'm sure you'll talk about it, is phenomenal. It's one of those songs that every time you listen to it, you hear something new. And I've been listening to it on repeat today. Been like, oh, I missed that bit last time. There's the staticky buzz, there's the hand clap beat, but there's all these blips and bleeps and these effects that happen, transitions in and out of the chorus. As a production, it's so rich. It's over 20 years old. It still sounds amazing. It sounds like something that an act today could come out with.
You've said it all there. This song is a production masterpiece of a pop song. And I'm going to say the word pop very loosely because Goldfrapp and Alison Goldfrapp, now a solo artist, as an act, so effortlessly cool, effortlessly cool in every respect. And I think part of the reason for that is just the level of production that goes into their music.
Yeah.
I know you said you're not as familiar with their stuff as I am. I was a really quite big fan, but it was this album that brought me to them. And from that point onwards, I dip in and out of their material all the time. And then when we get into the streaming era, it became so much easier to then go back and discover more. I was still quite young at the time, but I remember getting the album and just feeling like, wow, this is cool. This is so much cooler than other things that I was listening to at the time. The level of precision that goes into every single element of the recording, her really sultry, sexy vocals. It hasn't aged a day in 20 years as a song and as a piece of pop music. And the lyrics in the chorus, they kind of slide in and out, and the hooks hit you in different ways because the chorus itself is just a repetitive chant. But the things that they are in both the song and the video, and we'll get onto the video, the references that they're pulling for this song, you've got Kraftwerk and ABBA and a little bit of Blue Monday and Human League and all of these repeating, pulsating electronic rhythms. This was one of, if not the first songs that they ever used an electric guitar in, allegedly, in their production. They've said this because they wanted to avoid it, but it's put through so much 80s distortion. And I just love it. That pulsating rhythm in the chorus, it could very easily be novelty, because it is literally just, I need la 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 la, I need ooh la 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 la. But it's what is she saying behind those lyrics? Alison Goldfrapp has this way. She did it then and she still does it now on stage. I saw her earlier this year at 59 years old. And my best friend turned to me and said, my God, I want to be as cool as she is when I'm her age. She just oozes this confidence. And I love it in this song so much. It's really interesting to me that you say that it was a good evolution from the previous album, because they had a pattern with their albums, and we'll go on to talk about the album later, but there's no really another album that they've got which is sonically like this. Every album is very different. Their debut, Felt Mountain, which it may have only got to 57 in the chart, they were this very left field, critically acclaimed act, but it's so ethereal in its sort of soundscape. And then Black Cherry is this hard-edged electronic album with singles like Strict Machine and The Train. And then Supernature takes that and says, we're going to throw in all of these 80s influence and make it extremely commercial, and does it so well. But then the next album, the record company was probably there going like, great, can you make Supernature 2? Can you make Black Cherry 2? And they go, no, we're going to make Seventh Tree, which was this folk hippie influenced album with tracks A&E and Happiness, which are so beautiful. And then after that, they did albums like Head First and Silver Eye, which are once again quite poppy and electronic. And there's just a real diversity to it. And what I love about this album and this campaign and this song in particular is that it sits as a moment of pop music. And I think this song, I hope you agree, influenced a lot of other songs at the time.
Yes. Firstly, from a songwriting perspective, I did write down my favourite lyric from the song, which is, switch me on, turn me up, don't want it Baudelaire, just glitter lust. And I was like, what does that mean? Referencing a French poet from the 19th century. That's crazy. I love a left field pop lyric. It's one of those albums that I think, in hindsight, it was perhaps a little bit too ahead of the curve. This was a commercially successful, don't get me wrong, but in the same way that Girls Aloud was successful, but then once the industry caught up with what they were doing, then that allowed them to become even more successful. I feel like that's what happened a little bit with Goldfrapp, and that actually 2 years down the line, Supernature would have been much, much, much bigger because the industry had caught up with what they were doing and had a better understanding of where it fit in the charts.
Exactly. Between Supernature to Silver Eye, they darted from doing a dance record to doing an introspective folk record, to doing a pop record, to doing an acoustic introspective record, to doing a really hardcore electronic album. And I love that. because it defies what the industry expectation would have been. Yes, Supernature probably could have been bigger if it came out a couple of years later. If they'd have done a follow-up album which basically emulated that sound, it would have been huge, because they gave themselves this platform, worldwide success, to do something similar. Acts like, you mentioned Girls Aloud there, Rachel Stevens, which we'll talk about that reference later, your Little Boots, you've got the Sugar Babes, and then you've also got influence in people like Kylie and Madonna and Britney. We're a couple of years off Britney Blackout, but my God, the influence of this album is there, 100%. And then you follow that through line of albums like Blackout, then influencing Gaga when she started. Yeah. There's a real through line of electronic music being mainstream by being referential to 80s synth, but in a modern way. And it's why I say that I really don't think that as a duo, or even now as a solo artist, and she's fantastic, Alison and Will don't get the credit that they deserve for influencing pop music and commercial music in the way that they did. What do you think of the video directed by Dawn Shadforth?
Tell me what you see.
You're not going to thank me for this. It reminds me of Dr. Teeth and the Electric Mayhem from the Muppets.
Oh my God.
Just the styling, the way Alison Goldfrapp moves. I watched it and I was like, I could see Animal on the drums. It's very referential, like you said, to the glam rock 80s. I understand why this video looks the way it does, because this was a concerted effort to really secure a mainstream breakthrough. But I prefer the aesthetic from some of the videos on the previous album, like Strict Machine, which are a little bit more stylistic. They use a lot more blending of animation, and I really enjoyed that. But I also accept that that is perhaps a little bit too left field, because we are talking about a music industry that is still very much pigeonholed, and they still do that with this video, because you get that bit in the middle where, the horse that is skin is like a disco ball.
But that was a through line for the album campaign. So obviously, because she had the single Ride a White Horse, and then that links into that. And also there's references to Fly Me Away, the fourth single. I think that video is great. And I think all of those almost Muppet-like references, they're all intentional. It's like ABBA.
Really?
Well, it's the long-haired glam rock thing. It's like Hiss, bit of ABBA, but also the sound is like Kraftwerk. And then it surges into the disco ball horse. Honestly, Beyonce could never. I love the imagery that's created across the videos for this album. The follow-up song, Number One, which, in my opinion, is their best song. That is a masterpiece of a pop song. This is probably a close second. The singles from this album, imagery, the album artwork, all sort of comes together just really, really well. Yes, you have slightly lost the left field arty animation, but this, it's just slick. I love that everything for this album campaign is the green color comes through in all of the artwork, in all of the videos. Even if it's like green against pink or green against black, it's always referenced. I also don't think it's aged at all. I feel like there's acts that would do a video similar to this now.
A video like this can't really age because it didn't look contemporary at the time. No. It very much feels intentionally like a video from the late 80s. It's like they turned up and there was a green screen and someone forgot to use the green screen, so it just stays green. Totally. Because there are going to be a lot of people seeing this video who were unfamiliar with Goldfrapp. My God, the screen presence. It's not just Alison Goldfrapp, the band as well. It's so watchable. They just ooze this charisma that is just electric. It's so good. I mean, it's one of those videos that's simple, other than the disco horse, but it doesn't need any more because they are performers and they sell the hell out of it. I really, really, really appreciated that.
I love her on stage and I love her on screen. To move a bit on from the video, but to talk about Alison as a performer, every interview that I ever see with her, or if anyone saw her as a guest on Drag Race, for example, she comes across as very humble and almost quite shy, even though what she's actually giving off is effortless cool.
And our extra special guest judge, ooh la la, it's Alison Goldfrapp. You're my number one, darling.
You're my number one. Well, that's awkward.
We are so thrilled to have you here.
Thank you.
It was funny when she did Drag Race in that she was really tame. And then as the episode went on, she clearly really warmed up. And then she was like, oh no, I can have fun here. This is great.
Alison, do you have any history in Manchester?
Yeah, I love playing in Manchester.
I came to see you in Manchester once.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and you played, is it a Theremin?
Oh, yes, I used to
you
play...
You played it with your down below bits.
Yeah.
So not Goldfrapp, Gold Flaps.
Indeed. Yeah, I'm famous for my flaps.
Yeah.
And on stage, she just still exudes that effortless stage presence, and I just love it. She's referenced many times in interviews as well that she thinks that as an album, the Supernature album is the peak of what they did as a body of work. I also love Black Cherry, and I also love the album Head First, which was kind of their next, we're going to do a poppy record, but it takes different influences from the 80s. It's not the same glam rock influence.
Because this was their most visibly commercially successful album. I'm really glad that they were able to do that and not feel that they compromised, because how many acts do we talk about who go, yeah, that was my biggest album, but I hated it because I felt like I sold out. So it's great that they enjoyed success and they did it with an album that they're really proud of, because that doesn't happen that often.
But the album sits alongside her new solo material so well. She's had 2 solo albums, The Love Invention and Flux, both of which are quite sonically different. The Love Invention, the first one, was a bit harder edged in terms of dance, whereas Flux sits very much alongside the Head First album, which I just mentioned before. I know I'm throwing album titles out there that you don't know, but the breadth of work that they had as a duo and then she's got as a solo artist is massive. And it's really great to see that these songs, they're still proud of them and they sit alongside their other work. They're both Will and Alison have been posting recently about 20 years since this album came out. So it's the first time in a while that they've been posting stuff together, because they have said they have no plans to record music together as a duo, but never say never. I really, really love it. And I'm glad that we've had a chance to talk about this, because I do think it influenced a lot of other acts at the time. Speaking of which, let's talk about it then. Hopefully Alison never listens to this episode. What happened there with Rachel Stevens' Some Girls?
Well, there is a rumour, and I read this on Wikipedia, so of course, the source of truth. When Rachel Stevens released Some Girls, which was written and produced by Richard X, people went, oh, this sounds like Strict Machine by Goldfrapp, which at the time was a reference that would have been a bit lost on people. Now, according to Wikipedia, they gave Richard X an unmixed version of Strict Machine and asked him to create a remix for it. He never did, and then he wrote Some Girls. But Alison Goldfrapp has worked with Richard X, and I just don't think you would do that if someone had basically nicked one of your songs and written another song. I'm not sure I believe that, but there are similarities stylistically between them. What I think that did for me, as a very mainstream basic pop fan, as you know, I thought, well, if Rachel Stevens is doing this and I like the sound of this and it's inspired by Goldfrapp, I'm interested in Goldfrapp. And I think what Supernature did really well and what Ooh La La did really well, they may disagree. Either they or the label went, okay, well, there's a bit of interest in this now. Let's ride on that and let's actually use that exposure that we've passively gained through Rachel Stevens. Please don't feel like I'm crediting Rachel Stevens with Goldfrapp's breakthrough.
No, I know you're not.
There's a crossing over point where the re-release of Strict Machine got to number 20. That was their first top 20 hit and it was their highest peaking hit. To go from that to Ooh La La, which was much more successful, something had to happen in the interim, and it wasn't just positive word of mouth. Something shifted, and I do think that had something to do with it. People can come at me.
Probably an element of truth in terms of producers at the time were all seeing what the new trend was. And this links to my point in that Goldfrapp were doing at this point in UK music, if you're going to say a big statement here, what people like Madonna were doing in the 80s with New York underground music and disco, in that you were starting a trend, seeing how it influenced other people, seeing what worked, then following that trend. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Use Vogue as an example. Never going to be released as a single, but then when you saw that it was the ballroom scene in the New York was happening, that it was, oh, well, that's going to move up from the B-side and that's going to be the single and we're going to push that and remix it and do that, which is then going to lead into what we do on the next album of Justify My Love and then Erotica. And I feel like there's a cause and effect here. It's what I just said before about you can chart all of these acts within that 8 to 10 year period that would use synth and samples from 80s stuff in a way that Goldfrapp were doing. So, of course, if they were going to influence people like Rachel Stevens, of course, there probably was a nudge. Or maybe Alison and Will were like, you know what, this is hitting in the mainstream now. Let's do what we do, but we're going to do it with class. Well, that's what we think. But Craig, as the man with the stats, tell us what happened when this song was released.
Don't freak out until you know the facts. Relax, Max.
It debuted and peaked at number 4. It's their highest peaking hit. It was their first top 10 hit. And it was the 91st biggest selling single of 2005. It sold just over 64,000 copies. So it was successful. But I think the big success was the album, because that debuted at number 2 and it sold over 250,000 copies in 2005, and it's now sitting around 500,000 copies, which for the time, for this style of music, was huge.
Yeah.
Find Another Act in 2005. You talk about your Rachel Stevens and your Girls Aloud. They were struggling to shift that amount with so much more exposure, so much more mainstream. Well, Rachel Stevens, 250,000 copies. She ain't shifting that of an album.
It's because they were cool. It was cool to like this album and this style. I kind of, in my head, thought the single was bigger than it was. But as you say, it didn't need to be.
Sales at this point were so low. And
the album didn't get to number 1 does surprise me. But we're on that cusp. I mean, what was the release date of the song again?
8th of August, 2005.
2005, yes. Yeah, we're right bang in the middle of that decade. Sales are so bad at this point. We're just like, how does the music industry carry on?
We were just at that point where I don't think you could look at 2005 and say this style of music was popular. There was everything going on. You had your dance, your indie, your rock, R&B, your pop, your electro pop. There was no definitive sound for the middle of the decade. That changed. And maybe Ooh La La was instrumental in pushing that style.
But also pushing this idea of genre bending, because we're in an era in which any genre could have hit. It's just interesting that the next album, Seventh Tree, also got to number 2 in the chart and is completely sonically different. And that just shows that the music industry was a little bit all over the place where anyone was placing things and what people were expecting. And I just love that this sits at a point in which that sales were low, but it still sold so many copies. And it did so well in terms of nominations at award seasons around the world. It really pushed them, even for a short period, to global names.
Yeah.
Talk about the Grammys. Go on.
So you knew I needed to rant about this. This all starts from before Supernature, because one of the reasons that they say that they moved into this sound was because the songs from Black Cherry were hits on dance chart in America. Well, I know you've called it dance music. To me, Ooh La La is not dance music. Nonetheless,
it's electronically influenced pop. There's nothing dance about it. Their music isn't dance music. It doesn't really have a genre. That's what I love about it. But yeah,
so this is dance in the same way at the Grammys as Toxic won a Grammy for dance recording, didn't it? Toxic is not a dance song. So this was nominated for Best Dance Recording at the 2007 Grammys. Now, some of the songs in there are dance songs, so I'll cut them a bit of slack with that. But it was up against Get Together by Madonna. I accept that as a dance song. And the Grammy was won by Sexy Back by Justin Timberlake. Not a dance song.
Not a dance song. It was a Timbaland R&B pop song. Ooh La La is not a dance track. Even the tempo, people had this idea that when something is synth, it's automatically dance. Goldfrapp have written electronic songs.
Yeah.
But as a foray into dance-based music, I feel like you're getting a bit wishy-washy with your genres when you do that. It's like Sugar Babes winning Best Dance Act at the Brits. Still to this day, what?
Yeah. It just annoys me when people don't know how to classify music and don't know how to define it. And they're like, well, it's not that, so just shove it in there with everything else. I'm like, no, that is not how we do things. Anyway, that's how it happened. It was nominated for a Grammy, and that in itself is a huge achievement, even if it was beaten by not a dance song. But there we go.
Massive achievement. I'm sure it's still a really big deal for both of them. And 20 years on, the song has such a important place in my history of music and love. And you can't see it on here, but on my wall in my new flat, one of my music prints is actually the Supernature album print from the vinyl, because I just love that artwork. I think it's fantastic.
I love that. Right, firstly, I'm going to put the album on my iPod. My iPhone. How old am I? I am going to put it on there and listen to it.
Hello, 2003.
I'm going to get my Walkman out and put it on
my Discman, my cassette.
I don't know why. I'm just really giggly now. It's like System Muppets. Right. I'm going to listen to it because in my preparation, I listened to number one. I was like, wow. I'm not saying I've never heard it before, but it reminded me of what an incredible song that is.
That is a phenomenal song.
But also, I love their Greatest Hits album with the cover that uses the cover of the previous albums. Listen, gang, when you're doing Greatest Hits albums, take some inspiration from that. I love that style of actually referencing the old albums.
The singles collection cover is incredible. The only thing with it is that it was released after the first 5 albums, whereas they released 7. So in my Spotify playlist, I always make an extra, like a plus thing. You'd love the Head First album. If you've never heard any song on that, that's their poppiest sound next to this, definitely. Thank you for indulging me and letting me talk about this, because I adore Goldfrapp. And Alison, honestly, if you ever do listen to this, I would love to interview you, chat to you one day, because you just seem like such a lovely woman. Really down to earth. So, if you want to listen to Ooh La La by Goldfrapp, you can find it on streaming and the Supernature album or the singles collection by Goldfrapp. And where can they find us, Craig?
Because Can't Stop the Pop has a website where there are over 500 reviews, which you can find at can'tstopthepop.com.
We're also all over social media. My personal account is Matt_Atkins9 on Instagram, and you can find me on TikTok at Can't Stop the Pop Podcast, where we talk about loads of random pop music stuff in the interim between seasons as well.
I am at can'tstop_the_pop on Instagram and TikTok. We're also at Can't Stop the Pop on YouTube because we have video content, as you'll know if you're watching it. And we have a Patreon at patreon.com/can'tstopthepop for bonus content and exclusive episodes.
Do subscribe to our channels, including Patreon. Get in touch and let us know what you think of the song, what you think of Goldfrapp, what you think of our show. Please leave us a review, but only a good one, wherever you get your podcast from.
Thank you so much for listening. Please also do let us know who your favourite poet from the 19th century is, because we know Goldfrapp's. We want to hear yours. Join us next time for more
Can't stop the pop.